Hey there, emerging expat. You're tuned in to Let's Move to Portugal. I'm Victoria from Expats Everywhere's podcast, and I have the distinct honor of bringing you, YouTube travelers, and our resident of Portugal experts, Expats Everywhere's Josh and Kaylee. Each week they'll inspire, they'll educate, and they'll accompany you on your journey to Portuguese residency. This week on Let's Move to Portugal.
Ryan and Liz share their journey of moving to Portugal. They planned a brief stay in Portugal, but after 7 years, they're still here. Stay tuned to find out why they changed their mind.
To keep this podcast going strong, we've included a few brief ads. Thanks for supporting us by listening.
We're very happy that Savvy Cat Realty wanted to support us and sponsor the podcast, as we're actually clients of theirs.
When we started our journey to purchase our property in Portugal back in 2022, they came right alongside us in the process.
Savvy Cat Realty provides a highly tailored service to supporting those relocating to Portugal. Their mission is to find you the best match in continental Portugal. Their local experts will guide you through the whole process, keeping sustainability for both sides.
They have a full local team, including agents, lawyers, and engineers, making sure you are safe. And as locals, they believe fair prices are good for both sides.
And Savvy Cat Realty works with both rentals and purchases with budgets from $50K to millions, always making sure it's worth the cost.
Book a free call at savvycatrealty.com and have them on your side planning your move to Portugal.
Hey, expats and travelers alike, welcome back to Expats Everywhere Presents Let's Move to Portugal podcast. Kaylee, how you doing?
I'm doing really well. We're traveling right now, so if the sound isn't as good, or obviously if you're watching on YouTube and you see us, we're in a hotel room, but we are currently in Cardiff, which Josh and I have not been to Wales in a really long time, and we've never been to Cardiff, so we just got here today. First impressions, I really like it.
It's good.
Yeah, so everything's going well with me. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, same. Obviously, I'm absolutely buzzing still coming off of the Arsenal win over Spurs. So that was a lot of fun.
Which we were just in London for, yeah.
We went to the game in London, and then we're going to go back on Wednesday, and we're going to see Arsenal versus Bayern Munich. Shout out to Arsenal Portugal. We're part of that group, and that's how we have ticket access. So yeah, I mean, this is still the Portugal podcast. So
yeah, but
Portugal's
us
playing its part.
We can't stay still, so we're always on the move, always traveling, always doing something. A little bit of content. We're actually going to put out a video about Wales, so that will go on Expats Everywhere Explore. So we are filming for that. But yeah, just kind of checking out, Europe and the world, and getting that out to you.
Okay, so since this is in like a weird space, and we're not 100% sure how the audio is, we're going to keep this very condensed.
Yeah.
We don't have an immigration update really, except that it's just on pause.
Yeah, we're still waiting to hear about that. Video-wise, we've had a few good ones come out, a few interesting ones.
Yep, and excited for next week's, which is going to be comparing Portugal and Spain. We've done it in a very analytical way, and then this one is a little more story-driven, kind of telling our side of things and why we feel the way we do.
Yeah.
But putting it in a way that I think it'll benefit the viewer, because many people ask us, why did you choose Portugal over Spain in the end?
Yeah, so drawing on our personal experiences.
Exactly. Okay, so this week's episode.
Oh, it was so much fun. So we were on Ryan and Liz's podcast, and they put that out. We'll put that in the description and show notes and such. But then we had both of them on ours, and crazy stories. So Liz is from the U.S. and Ryan is from South Africa. They met in very weird circumstances, which we talk about the story there. They have very different personalities, different stories, and so we kind of unpack that and their journey abroad as well.
Yeah, so we ready to get into it?
Yeah, obviously they're living in Portugal now too, so they will they'll talk about that.
Yeah, and that was why we were on their podcast as well, because they talk about living abroad and specifically Portugal.
And maybe their podcast also touches on the maybe annoying things or the not so great things about Portugal, because they do exist, right? No place is perfect. Yeah. So that is a little bit highlighted on there. So if you want to hear about that, then go to theirs, but then you can hear their story on ours. So let's get to it.
Let's do it. We know that relocating can be stressful. Trust us, Portugal is the 5th country we've relocated to.
So it's nice to have someone helping you out, which is why we can confidently recommend Global International Relocation, which is a leading provider of relocation, moving, and mobility services.
They can support individuals, families, and even businesses when it comes to moving internationally.
I like how they're able to simplify the relocation process, and they help with everything you can think of, and actually even those things that you don't think of.
Of course, you have the immigration side of things, but there are aspects like pet relocation, shipping your car, moving household goods, and settling in that are all things they assist with. They're really comprehensive when it comes to mobility.
With over 17 years of experience and having expertise in over 180 countries, they aren't just for your move to Portugal.
So for personalized assistance, visit global.pt or get in touch with us for an introduction and to receive a personalized relocation quote. One of the most important pre-move things to consider involves your finances. Here's the cool thing. If you've moved already, it's not too late.
Yeah, that's right, because we met John a little late in our journey, but he certainly helped us make sure that we're on the right track.
John McNerney from Green Ocean Advisors is an American living in Lisbon with an office in San Francisco, which helps him have a pulse on both sides of the pond. John helps people understand where they're at before they take the plunge and move abroad.
As a financial advisor, John can help you understand your financial position no matter what stage of life you're in, whether you're curious about what your realistic retirement date is or how to invest your money post-retirement.
His love for finance and the differences between US and Europe have given him the ability to guide his clients in the right direction when it comes to investing and allocating funds. For example, you might want to sell your house before you become a tax resident here in Portugal, so you're not paying additional taxes here.
Josh and I have even talked to him on several occasions about some major life events that have happened to us and how to navigate them smartly from a financial perspective. If you'd like to be put in touch with John from Green Ocean Global, click on his Calendly link below to schedule a free consultation that he provides our viewers to see if he's the right fit for you.
Just make sure that you choose the Expats Everywhere intro call for your free consultation.
Ryan and Liz, I'm so excited to talk to you today. Thanks for joining us. You guys have been here for quite a long time. So let's talk a little bit about how long you've been here, where you live, and why did you move to Portugal?
Yeah, so we moved to Lisbon in January of 2019. And I think we chose Lisbon because it was the biggest city and we didn't really know much about Portugal. I think something about our journey is that we planned almost nothing. And when we were deciding like where to go, Ryan and I met in an airport in Muscat, Oman. And then
we're going to circle back to that for sure.
We'll circle back. Yeah. And then we did long distance for a bit. And then I moved to South Africa, where he's from. I'm originally from New York. And we lived in South Africa for about 6 months. And then we're deciding where we wanted to live, if we wanted to stay in South Africa, if we wanted to go somewhere else. And yeah, we found a path to an easier visa in Portugal. And without really looking at much, we were like, okay, let's try.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and you've been here ever since.
Yeah, it's been almost 7 years. At the start of next year will be 7 years. But I think that was the thing, is that sort of understanding that Portugal is a good place to be able to access the rest of Europe, be able to go to the United States, where Lizzie's from. So to have that availability, I think, was a big deal and inspired a lot of us making this decision to move over.
And truly, I think we were just very lucky, because we look, especially now, at people who are planning these moves abroad, and they do years of research before deciding on a place. And we were like, okay, what do we need? We need to be close to the ocean, because Ryan needs to surf. We need to have something that's easy to get around, so a good airport. Okay. What else do we really need? Like, those were the main things. So surfing and good airport brought us to Portugal. And yeah, like he said, we've been here ever since. So we spent that first year in Lisbon. And then we had a friend that I knew from 10 years prior from Serbia was living in Setubal and invited us over for a barbecue. And we went to that barbecue, and we had never been to Setubal before. And as soon as we got off the train, Ryan was basically like, why don't we live here?
And you were like, okay. How long did it take before you moved?
From that barbecue to moving, I think was about 3 months, because we needed to wait for the end, because we had a year contract in our apartment in Lisbon. So we waited for that to finish before we moved over here.
What visas did you come in on?
Yeah, so my father was born in Poland. Okay. So I was born in New York, but my father was born in Poland. So I came in on a Polish passport. So EU citizen, everything super easy and seamless and hassle-free. And Ryan did not.
Dun, dun, dun.
I don't look very European, clearly, so it had to be a different way.
Yeah, so you were D7.
I was with the D7, and then I came over. I was doing data science at the time, ending up working in investment banking at BNP Paribas in Lisbon, and that was a great experience in and of itself too. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we're going to talk all about Portugal, but I want to get a little more of the backstory with how you met. So what were you doing in Oman? You met in an airport. How did you meet? Tell us about what stage of life you were in when you met. Tell that story.
Yeah, it was a pretty crazy stage of life. Do you want to go for it?
Okay, well, I'll tell you. Liz is so well rehearsed in being able to tell this story, and I always try and throw in my few pieces. So basically, what had happened was we were both coming out of long-term relationships at the time. I was actually finalizing the last few steps of my divorce in India. I had been married to someone from India. And I was now flying back to South Africa. And I think, back in those days, it was about booking 5,000 little flights to save like $20. And that's really what it is we were doing. So my route was Bangalore, Mumbai, Oman, Nairobi, Kenya, Johannesburg, and then my tiny little town where I live in South Africa. And and I was just sort of, I wouldn't say heartbroken, but, just completely over that whole relationship, looking forward to starting a whole new path in life. Flew over, ended up in Oman, which is where I was standing. And at those days as well, I used to smoke cigarettes. So there I am in the little smoking section with all the heathens of society just in the corner there. And then this man walks by saying, "Who's going to Nairobi? Who's going to Nairobi?" And I was like, "I'm going to Nairobi." So I ran after him. And then he broke the news to us that our flight had been delayed by how many hours?
Yeah, 9 hours. Took us to a Dairy Queen in the airport and said, "You get a free chicken burger. Like, good luck." So I had been yeah, exactly. So I had been flying from Australia to Abu Dhabi, to Oman, to Nairobi, because I had also just ended a longer relationship and my mother had died less than a year earlier, and I was just going through a lot. So what do? You move in with your best friend. So my best friend from high school was living in Nairobi at the time. So I was like, you know what? That's what I'm going to do. I'm moving to Nairobi. Like, let's just do that. So yeah, in Oman airport, who's for Nairobi? That was me. So I also went to the Dairy Queen line and got my free chicken burger. And I think Ryan is a very introverted person who doesn't like talking to strangers. I am the opposite of that. So I was trying to make friends with everyone in the line because you've got 9 hours to kill. Why not have a chat and meet some people?
Yeah, the loud American in the crowd. Usually I'm just in the corner avoiding the whole thing, and now this loud American was talking directly at me about the options of chicken burgers and what life could be depending on what we choose, And I kind of look back, and I wouldn't say I was dismissive, but I try to kind of like cut the conversation short, but not without severing the connection, because I know that she's on the same flight to Nairobi.
Yeah.
So
you can't make her mad.
Exactly. Because, there's that whole thing of like, now you're all in the same boat. You might not need to be friends, but you do want to keep an eye on your cohort, because if things change and you might get like moved on to like the next flight or something, you want to be in the mix. You know? And so I sort of stayed within eyesight of Liz at the time. Yeah.
And at that time, I had the Chase Sapphire credit card, which gives you the priority pass. And at that time, so this was in January of 2018, there was no limit to how many guests that you could bring. So here I was in this Dairy Queen line, and I was like, "Hey guys, so like, here's the deal.
Who wants to be my friend?"
Exactly. So I recognized this guy who had flown from Sydney with his daughter, who must have been like 5 years old, cute kid. And you kind of like track like cute kid. And I asked him, I was like, "Would you like to be my guests in the lounge? Is that weird?" And he said, "Yeah, that's a bit weird." And I was like, okay, well, I don't want to take no for an answer here. So what if I invite more people? Like, that would clearly make it less weird, right?
Yeah,
and
not like we're having a date or something.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I found other people in the line at the Dairy Queen. Ryan was one of them, and was like, "Would you like to come to the lounge?" So Ryan immediately thought that
I had been watching a lot of Border Security, that TV show, where people are being pulled over and arrested for having a shoebox full of toads and like fermented chicken. And I thought, this lady's going to ask me to carry something here for sure. So I kind of like kept my distance until enough people said that they would join her, and then I said, okay, fine, I'll come along then. It'll be all right.
Yeah, that's not paranoid at all, right?
yeah, exactly.
I'm a nervous flyer at times, for sure.
Okay.
But then I think there's something really beautiful about, so then we went to that lounge, and there's something really beautiful about the conversations that you can have with people that you are sure you will never see again for the rest of your life, because you have nothing to hide. And you can be really open, you can share about anything, really. So in those 9 hours with lounge free alcohol, we were able to talk a lot. And I think, I definitely didn't think I would ever see you again at that point still.
No, I think the whole thing is that we were sitting there. It was Liz, myself, and another guy named Brett, who we haven't seen since, which is a tragedy. But we sat there just having these conversations about being in a situation where, if I'm honest, we were pretty much all at one of the lowest points in our lives, at least up until that stage. And there was no reason to hide anything because of this assumption you were never going to see each other again. And we were able to actually show who we were truly as people without there being that ego, without needing to look as if we were more successful or doing better than we were. And I think what ended up happening as a result of that was I got to actually know who Liz was as who she really is. And I think she got the same opportunity to get to know me as well. And it wasn't something that was expected. We certainly weren't looking for relationships at the time. But if that connection is there, then something needs to happen because of it. And at that time, it certainly wasn't very graceful because we just got onto the plane very drunk, sat in the wrong seats and made out for 7 hours.
Like teenagers. And we were 30.
That's funny. And you're like, well, I'll never see this person again, so whatever.
Exactly this.
Or any of these other people around me too, right? Oh my gosh, how funny. But it's actually a really great way to start a relationship, like completely honest with each other. You're not hiding anything. And I think that a lot of people don't start their relationship like that because they want to come off like they're, just maybe better than they are or whatever it might be. But you guys were actually at really low points and all of that was just kind of laid bare. So, I mean, there's only going up from there, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so you make out the whole time to Nairobi, and then you just think, well, that's it? I mean, obviously, then you got each other's phone numbers, right?
He added me as a friend on Facebook.
Because Facebook was big back then, the FB, man, that's where things went down.
Oh, no, I have to be honest. That's how Josh and I connected as well, was Facebook.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
When we were in university, we connected when it was just university students. Remember when it first, when Facebook was first a thing? It was only for university students. So we were in that first wave. We were at university when it came out, and it went, viral for among that group. And so that's how we ended up connecting. I mean, obviously, it's evolved a lot since then. But yeah, that's kind of what you did. Right now, I think it's a bit more of like Instagram or WhatsApp, but back in those days, right, it was Facebook. So you added on Facebook and then just kept in touch because, Liz, you were in Nairobi, and then Ryan, you went back to South Africa.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because what actually happened was, obviously because of this major delay from the flights, all of my connecting flights going forward were now destroyed. So I needed to find a new way to get back home. And so we had added each other on Facebook, but Liz had sent me a message, and then I just didn't reply because I wanted to think about things. I needed to get home. And it was like 3 days later, eventually, that I got home because of needing to piece together. Because, again, this was because none of these tickets were booked in one package. It was all just random flights. So I did get home, and, it really was a point in my life where I was thinking, I've just left this long-term relationship. Am I going to do anything about this again? But I really felt so much for Liz, and I sent her a very long Facebook message, really, again, in the spirit of being completely honest and saying, if we're going to do this, I want to do it properly. And I don't know if I want to do this. And, that's where I'm at. And so Liz's response was, well, we can talk about this because I think I'm going to come there in like 2 weeks.
Very American of me. Very just like, if we're going to do this, let's do this. And also, I wasn't planning to have a relationship. I was like, I liked you. Let's have fun. I'll come and visit in 2 weeks. Yeah.
Okay. So you weren't planning on visiting, but then with this message, you said, I'll just come and visit. Is
Exactly.
kind of what happened. Okay, I thought you were going to say, and she gave me the old thumbs up. You know, like,
No,
that's it, just
wow.
a thumbs up emoji.
No, she kicked down the door and came into the house. That's what happened.
But he was very nervous. He was very concerned about this stranger just like flying to East London. And East London, South Africa, when you book a flight to East London, South Africa, I booked it on Expedia back in those days. And the email that they send you of attractions that you can see in East London is all things in East London, the UK.
Oh my god!
Because they
Funny.
like even
That's how-
Expedia doesn't know East London, South Africa.
Yeah.
I will say we have wonderful people and wonderful beaches and at least 5 great restaurants. So, I just wanted to give a shout out to my people there from my tiny little surfing
go
village.
East
No.
London. East London.
East London,
Africa.
it is a great city. It is really, but Expedia doesn't know much about it.
Yeah. Maybe they will now. We're putting it
There
out
you
there for
go.
them. Okay, so then everything went well on that trip, and then Liz, I forget if you said before, did you move to South Africa before coming to Portugal, or you two just
Yeah.
decided let's meet up in Portugal? Okay,
Yeah,
you were
so
in
we
South
did about
Africa for a little
6 months of long distance, and then I moved to South Africa, and we were in South Africa for 6 months.
Okay.
And then during those 6 months, we were kind of deciding, should we stay, should we go? And I think you were always ready to go. And at that point, I had been traveling full time since 2010. So I had been traveling full time for quite a while at that point, and really didn't think of anywhere as quote unquote home. And really just kind of thought of wherever I was going next, wherever I was going next. And I didn't put too much stock into a decision on where do we actually want to be. I think that I'm a lot more spontaneous than Ryan is. And I think that I was a lot easier to flow to the next place and then the next place and then the next place, versus Ryan actually took the decision more seriously than I did. But I kind of led and pushed with my spontaneity. So I think that's kind of how we got to Portugal, where he wanted something that could be sustainable. And I was like, we can go anywhere. Let's just go anywhere.
Yeah, I think another thing that comes into play is understanding that at some point in your life you've reached the full length of an experience and you need to change things. And I think that's where I was at that time, to be able to say, look, this is not anything to do with the badness of my situation, but rather saying, I think my time in this place with these people has come to an end. I think it's time to take the next step. And I think certainly for me, it probably wouldn't have been anywhere as far as Portugal, but it definitely needed to not be where I was before. And so a combination of feeling that way and meeting Liz, who really is happy to push the boundaries and go as far as, she would like to go to experience something new. I think I thought that was really a nice place to be able to make this decision, which is how we ended up here, I feel.
Yeah. Okay, well then this answer might be different for each of you, but when you decided Portugal, were you thinking you'd be here as long as you are, or were you going to give it a go for a couple years, or like what were you thinking when you moved to Portugal, long term, or just kind of next step and then who knows from there?
I mean, I can go first. I definitely didn't expect us to live here long term. I thought maybe a year, maybe 2. And you?
Well, I thought that we were going to live here, but again, like I said, I thought we were going to use this as a base to actually do a lot of other travel within Europe. And what ended up happening was us going through COVID, which meant we were locked inside for 2 years, and those 2 years really made a big difference to my mindset of thinking, I know what, this is actually my house. This is actually where I live in this particular place. Because in the first year that we were living in Lisbon, I think we had only spent maybe like 4 months in Lisbon, because we were traveling and doing road trips and going to new places. And that all just came to a complete halt the second COVID started. And I think that shifted things a lot for us.
And I think COVID also changed our idea of what we needed. I think especially for me, where I had been traveling nonstop, I didn't own anything. I'm a carry-on only girl, so I had been living with a carry-on suitcase for over a decade at that point. And I really didn't see a need to have a home. I didn't see a need to have anything permanent. And then when COVID happened, I actually understood why you would need to have a place that was safe that you could come back to. And I think that it changed my mind about being able to be fully detached from everything and just kind of float to the next destination versus needing to have some kind of stability when things go down, because it really felt, we were so grateful to be in the apartment that we're in right now. We moved here in February of 2020. The kitchen was installed on March 16th of 2020, the day before the lockdown started. It was really, really close. And I think having that really made us appreciate knowing that we have a place and we can come back. And if anything happens, this is actually ours.
Mm-hmm. And so you kind of kept that mindset even after obviously COVID is done and things have opened back up, but because of how that it shifted your mind, and you still hold that. So which is why you don't have any plans to potentially leave Portugal?
I think, yeah, I feel like the longer we are in Portugal at one time, the more the bureaucracy and the waiting for things kind of like niggles at us. And I think that travel is really the key for us. And Portugal, we want to be home, but we also want to make sure that we're not in Portugal for at least like 2-3 months a year so that we can be happy to come back. Because I think when we're here for 8-9 months in a row, it can get a bit tiring to be dealing with some of the issues that are just the day-to-day issues of Portugal. And every place has day-to-day issues. It's not like Portugal is the only one that we would have these issues with. But being able to travel and being able to leave and come back makes such a big difference to us. And when we look at our friends who are fellow expats from all different countries, the happiest ones are the ones who travel regularly, who are here for 3 months and then gone for 2 weeks, and then here for a month and a half and then gone for a week, and then here for like in this kind of cycle. And I think that's what we're aiming for. So keeping Portugal as home, but to start to incorporate more travel into our lives in order to not only have Portugal.
Yeah, I think I'll just also hasten to add it's not necessarily like long distance trips, going to crazy exotic locations. I feel like sometimes like a week in Spain, which is just 2 hours away from us, might be something that really makes a difference to how we feel just as people. And using those opportunities, I think, is a big thing for us to feel as though the time gets broken up and we're constantly engaged with our environment and we're feeling positive. And I don't know, maybe it's something similar to what people live like, even if they don't leave their home countries, of saying you are in the place where you were born, and maybe it would be nice to get away for a couple of months a year. And, it eases a lot of the stress that you might be feeling in any particular place. So, maybe it's just normal life, really, that we're describing, but in a very fancy way.
Yeah.
It makes you appreciate where you live.
Absolutely.
Right? So just getting away a little bit, enjoying yourself, but being happy and excited to come back home. Yeah. Just kind of, mixes it up a little bit. Josh and I feel the same way. We love to travel and we do it a lot, but it's always nice for us, especially when if Will's touch down in Porto. Because even for us, even like when we get to Lisbon, we're still like, oh, we're in Lisbon and we're not home yet. So for us, it's like once we get back to Porto, it's like we're home. And so we love to travel, but it's always nice to come home as well. Yeah. I do want to know, though, you're talking about the little things that niggle at you, and I'm sure our audience wants to know, what are those? what can be done besides, just the travel aspect and getting in and out? Like, what are the things that you're finding like are kind of a pain in the butt?
So I think it's really interesting that our answers are completely different from each other. So the things that bother Ryan the most don't really bother me. The things that bother me the most don't really bother Ryan. My number one is the CTT, the Portuguese Post Office.
Okay.
I hate the Portuguese Post Office with a passion. There's no place in this entire country that I have cried more than at CTT, because no matter what, they will not give you your package. Once my uncle sent us something and he wrote both of our names in handwriting and they transcribed it to typed names and they spelled those names wrong as they were transcribing his handwriting to the typed names, and they wouldn't give us the package because both names were spelled wrong. So we clearly weren't either of those people. And mine was like one letter off. And I'm standing there like begging, like, come on, like clearly that's me. It's my address. There aren't that many people named Elizabeth. Let's be real. Yeah. And he was just like, no, can't give it to you. Impossible.
It was for T-shirts. So, like, we are the least ambitious male fraudsters of all time trying to steal those T-shirts from CTT. Yeah.
And then I was trying to renew my U.S. passport. And you have to do that. At that time, it was through the mail. And I had to send a money order. And it was really like... I had to go to like 4 different post offices. I had to get a friend whose mom used to work for CTT. And she actually like called someone and looked through the bylaws to find something to get me to get some help. It required at least 3 different friends and over a week of my life to send a money order because they already had my passport. So I couldn't send a money order, but I have a second passport because my dad was born in Poland and they wouldn't accept that to send a money order. Really, I just think at the post office, it is the most extreme example of this is what the flowchart says. If this, then yes. If that, then no. And if anything is outside of that flowchart, they're just like, nope, not doing it. And it drives me insane. Getting a package sent is honestly like a nightmare for me. Anyone who's like, oh, I want to send you something. I'm like, please don't. Please. Don't do it. I would love it if you do not send me anything.
Yeah.
And yours, Ryan?
Have you switched over to DHL or anything? Or, I mean, because sometimes you just can't, right? You can't avoid it because it is the National Post Office here. Yeah. But do you at least go like, well, I'm going to pay more to send something by DHL just so I don't have to deal with CTT?
I mean, honestly, this only happens a few times a year because I don't send anything and I try really hard not to receive anything. It's only when you have to, but when you have to, I hate it.
Okay, all right. CTT and Ryan?
Look, I don't know what things are like in Porto, but the roads of central Portugal are too much for me, okay? Way too much. The driving here is so overwhelming. I have never lived in a place where people drive as dangerously as this. It is unbelievable not being able to feel safe on the road. I think a big part of it must be linked to my anxiety as a person. I get that. But then I also look at some very crazy behavior, people not parking correctly, not giving way to pedestrians over zebra crossings.
Wow.
We've got a crossing just outside of our house here, and it's a dangerous place. Traffic circles, people not knowing how traffic circles work.
Parking in the middle of a traffic circle.
Of the street, the speed, and I don't know. I say this, and I know that there needs to be balance, between the good things of Portugal and the bad things of Portugal. But I find it really difficult to deal with the driving because it's so, I think, lawless. I mean, that's the right word for it. Because you need to use that to go places and do stuff. And every time I need to get into the car, I'm very nervous because it doesn't matter what it is that you're doing. If someone else is doing, I got T-boned on a main road here last year. Just very standard day. And you can't really drive defensively to keep yourself safe from that kind of stuff. So if anything, if anyone wants to know what to watch out for, be very aware on the roads, because I think it is something that you don't need to necessarily deal with in a lot of other countries, especially in Europe and the United States, and even in South Africa. It's not this bad. So that's something that I really struggle with for sure. And
I think too, the unpredictability of drivers is really difficult for Ryan. So even in Kenya, when I was living in Kenya, Ryan would come to visit a lot. And there's definitely some lawlessness in driving in Kenya. It's very aggressive and you kind of have to push in a bit. And if you don't push in a bit, you're not going to get your space. And you learn the rules of how to drive in Kenya. But as soon as you understand those rules, you're fine. And when he came for the first time, I think you were a bit scared of the driving in Kenya.
sure.
And then I explained the rules to him, and then you were actually quite comfortable.
Yeah.
But in Portugal, we've been here for almost 7 years now, and we still don't understand the rules because there are no rules, really.
Yeah.
And different people are going to drive very differently. And like we're saying, I think a lot of people, especially in smaller places, drive as if there are no cars on the road, but there are. So
Yeah.
when you park in the middle of a roundabout, there's
That's
a
crazy.
backup for 10 minutes of people
Yeah.
waiting to use that roundabout.
Well, and then my issue with that is like, where are the police who are should be regulating this? That's the problem. Is it's not regulated, so it just becomes like, well, you can do this, and then it causes all sorts of traffic and issues, and people get mad and they get more aggressive and whatever. It just escalates because it's not actually regulated.
It's true.
There's a friend of ours, a Portuguese guy, and they've been some of our closest friends. And he once said to us, one of the interesting things about Portuguese culture is the fact that Portuguese people refuse to govern themselves, but they also won't allow anyone else to govern them. And I'm like, you know what? That makes complete sense. Exactly. And so I think that's maybe something that we can accept as being inherent to freedom, of not being controlled. So there's good sides and there's bad sides of that kind of freedom. And unfortunately, this might be one of the bad sides.
Yeah. So then, you own your car there in Setubal?
We bought it during COVID, and
Okay.
I'm from New York. I never wanted to have a car. I never wanted to live in a place where you needed to have a car. And I felt really strongly about that. And then during COVID, you couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't do anything. So we rented cars. And then we felt like the safest thing to do during COVID would be in your enclosed space in your little car. And then you could at least go somewhere and do something. And I think I fought it for a while of like, I don't want to have a car. I don't want to have a car. I don't want to have a car. But having a car has completely changed our experience of living in Portugal because we've been able to do these longer road trips and we don't use the car day to day. I would say when we're here in a normal week, the car just sits there and we don't use it at all. But then in the end of 2021, we drove to Serbia and back.
Oh. Wow,
And,
cool, okay.
Yeah, so we took a 3-month trip there, and then we went to see the Springboks, the South African rugby team, play in the Rugby World Cup in France, and we drove there and took a road trip around France, and we're able to do these longer trips that renting a car would be very expensive, especially to cross borders and all of this. But I feel like we have a dog as well during COVID. Lots of our lives changed during COVID.
Sounds like it.
So I think being able to take the dog with us in the car has made travel a lot easier.
Okay. So someone can get around Setubal without a car, no problem, but it's for like exploring outside if you wanted it, especially if you want it more long term or with a dog or something rather than renting a car.
Oh, for sure. I think that getting around Setubal, trying to drive, you're just wasting time. You'll honestly get there faster walking.
Okay.
But to go somewhere else, like if you want to go to Lisbon, the train takes over an hour and you are going to get to the train station and then you're going to have to take the metro and then you're going to have to whatever. Or the drive is like 35 minutes. To go to somewhere further away, if you want to go to a tiny town, that's when it really comes in handy because when you want to go somewhere small, there really isn't public transportation. And I think a lot of our favorite places in Portugal are the places that don't have any train or bus access and are just a tiny little town that we find somewhere to stay in. And then we actually really enjoy that trip very much.
Okay, so someone who has a bit of a heart for exploring those smaller places, a car definitely comes in handy.
I think it's useful. I think the other thing, to check out potentially are the prices of rental cars. So we've been very lucky over the years before we actually had our own car to have gotten really good deals on rentals, and so that makes it a lot more convenient without needing the responsibility of owning a car, but then being able to do these smaller staycations around Portugal, because so much of the best part of Portugal aren't actually in the main cities, and being able to access that means that you would need generally your own transport. So that's a nice option to have too.
But really, for these international trips,
Yes.
I think it would be difficult to do in a rental car.
Yeah. Okay, so tell us a little bit about Setubal. You stepped off the train, and you're like, I love it here. What do you love about it? What's good about it?
Well, I think so. So really, the story of like why we chose it, I think, is still relevant today. Maybe in a bigger sense. But we got off that train that day and we went to this barbecue. And for me, I don't think I knew anyone there.
No, you didn't
So
know
I had
anyone.
never met anyone that was at that barbecue. But I think it was almost like kind of idyllic and a bit like romanticized, maybe in my memory, and I think it may be in reality. But it was on a terrace, in someone's garden, and they were having this little barbecue. Nothing crazy, like it wasn't about the food, but everyone brought a little bit of something, and it was just this group of people that were happy to be there together. And most of the people there were local, with another like maybe a quarter of them being new immigrants as well. And so everyone was just there talking and sharing, and it was outside, it was summer, it was, there was fairy lights, fairy lights go a long way to creating intimacy.
Magical.
Exactly this. And I said to Liz, this is something that's important to me, being able to connect with people this way and listening to people actually talk about what it is that they were going through, with people who were willing to listen. So that means that there's friendship and connection there. And that's something that's very important to me. And I said, well, it's not really too much of an issue for me what the environmental stats are of a particular place, like what infrastructure they've got or anything. But if I've got people who I can actually connect with and feel at home with, I want to be there and I want to call that home. And like Liz was saying, we only had 3 months left on the lease at the time in Lisbon, and we needed to choose another place. And here we are with a group of people who are absolutely lovely. And it's been now 6 years that we've been living here. We've had countless more experiences like that with that group, and we've added significantly more people to it. So for me, we've got Arabida, the big mountain and nature reserve here. We've got the beautiful bay. We've got the fishing boats. We've got the choco frito, which is our local dish. We've got so many amazing things here, and that's great. But being able to say that we've found friendship and community has been the number one thing, which is what actually makes me call this place home.
And I think it was a bit of a stark contrast to Lisbon, because I think we really struggled in Lisbon with the digital nomad scene. I think that we went to a lot of meetups, and you meet a lot of people who are all pretending to be very rich and very successful and so much cooler than you could ever be. And I just think that it was really difficult for us to have real conversations with anyone. And it seemed like everyone was kind of one-upping each other. And even friends that we made, and we still have friends in Lisbon. We still go to see some friends that we made in Lisbon. But really, I think overwhelmingly, when we would go and try to meet people, we found this almost a vibe of, listen to how amazing I am. And I'm so much better than you could ever be. And we're like, I just wanted to get a coffee, but okay, tell me about how amazing you are again.
Yeah. It's hard to build
was-
relationships like that.
Absolutely. And I don't think that like people are necessarily doing it on purpose to appear to be that way. I think a lot of it is denial of the vulnerability of being in a new place with no support structure, potentially without any guaranteed work, maybe being unsure about your living arrangements, maybe income is low. Those kinds of things are all like very stressful. And if you're standing there, you're going to be very insecure because your situation doesn't lead to confidence. So to convince other people that everything is okay is part of you convincing yourself that things are okay. And
Ryan's a psychotherapist.
Sounds like it. Yeah.
And I think that that's okay. But then I also need to look at myself and say, like, well, I do need to connect with someone because it's important for me. And I think it might be too much work and it might take too long for this person to actually get to a point where they can actually connect with me. And so I would rather just sort of wish them well on the journey that they're going on and continue my search. And, thank goodness, I feel as though I've managed to find that, I think Liz as well. Yeah.
And it seems like Setubal is growing with expats. I mean, it's becoming a really good alternative to Lisbon, people who want to be maybe in the region but not be in Lisbon for a variety of different reasons. So have you seen in the past couple of years the expat community grow there? Tell us about it. Too much?
Yeah. No.
Look at his face.
Yeah, I think the expat community has definitely grown massively. So when we first moved here in 2020, we had a little group of Serbian friends, there were some French people, there were some Germans, there was a mix of people. I knew one American, shout out Conrad. So there were very few English native language speaking expats here. And I think the diversity of the group that was here was really beautiful. And I don't think that anyone was walking down the street speaking in English and thinking that everyone else should understand them. And now, unfortunately, you do get that. I was walking down the street in July and this woman was riding a bicycle and she shouted in English, "Get off the bike path."
Oh, weird.
And I was really upset by that.
Yeah.
Because the Portuguese man who was on the bike path was walking, living his life, but also there's no way that he would have understood that. And for her to have the audacity to shout at this man in English, really, I think that when people are coming here, they're seeing this thriving group of expats in Setubal. They're joining this Facebook groups and they're believing that they're just going to live their English speaking lives here. And I feel really sad that they don't want to integrate as much into Portuguese culture. They don't want to speak the language. They don't want to make friends with local people. And I think that's been a big change of the kinds of people who are coming now.
Yeah, I think the balance of things has changed. So when we had come, we were obviously in a very strong minority, which meant that there was a lot of pressure for us to integrate in a Portuguese context of us being more local, rather than there being any kind of expectations for locals to be more like us, which I think is what's happened with the massive influx of people. And so it becomes difficult because I think we have got a healthy respect for the Portuguese culture, people, and structure of society. And when you step into it and you don't actually need to observe it or respect it, I'm not surprised that you're not going to be able to actually take that on as an obligation for you to fit in. And I think that's been a really difficult thing to watch, because I think a lot of people are in that situation without necessarily knowing it, because they've arrived here and they're just adapting to whatever is already here. And so with more and more people, they're just adapting to a place that's more and more expat driven. And that's really tough to watch, because I think you do start seeing, we will go down to the local town square here. And like Liz was saying, like over 6 years ago, you didn't hear any English in that area, whereas now it's sometimes difficult to pick up when there's a person speaking Portuguese. And that's not a criticism, it's just saying that that's how things have changed. But what type of impact is that having on culture? Well, how is that impacting the way local people are living? How's that making them feel, depending on like how much we're making an effort to connect? And sometimes that's good, sometimes it's not. And I think it's a tough thing, because you can't make a general statement on every single person, because we've met some amazing people who have moved over.
For sure.
And then we've also met a lot of people who have, I think, made the place considerably worse. It's part of the mix, And I think I always try and take the perspective of a local person, even though I'm not, to say, how has my home changed, and there's an answer to that, and I don't know if we'll ever really get the truth, because Portuguese people are so nice and polite and kind. And so
Yeah, it's really tough to manage like that balance. Are you seeing too, like, is it people moving and tourists, or is it mainly people moving? Because like for us in Porto, obviously, since it's a bigger city, I would say, 5 years ago, you would barely hear English, even though the Portuguese speak such good English. Walking around on the streets, you don't hear it. But I think once it hit all, like Porto especially hit the lists of like best places to visit and, top places in Europe for tourism. So now, I mean, there's a lot of people moving here as well, but it's hard to tell, like when you're down in the center, like a lot of it feels like tourism as well. Because once you hear what they're talking about, like they're clueless, right? They're clearly on tours or clueless as to like what they're looking at or where they're going. So you're like, okay, there's so much more tourism down in the center as well. But we do also see a big influx of people moving. So do you see a lot of tourists in Setubal too, or is it more people moving?
Yeah, during summer, especially summers, of course,
summer.
There's a massive influx of tourists, which is great for the city, and I think we're quite supportive of it. In fact, it makes it a bit more difficult as a local to move around, but if for the greater good for the city, I think that it is a good thing. But then we've also seen a major change in property prices and the availability of housing, which makes me feel as though there has been this influx of people who are moving here permanently, at least planned to be permanent. And it also hasn't been a increase of rental properties available, which means that a lot of the people who are purchasing are actually living in their apartments. So I feel as though it has changed quite drastically. We're part of quite a few smaller like paddle-based communities or different art-based like WhatsApp groups and stuff where people do activities. And we've actually seen those groups change so much, where people who we had spent so much time with like 5 years ago are the smallest number of people in that group now. And so they're doing these activities and you would attend having started it, but it not being anyone from the original group. So, it's a lot of new people coming in and it's part of, I think, what's happening in a lot of places across the country,
And even around Europe, I think too. I mean, Portugal's gotten really popular, but there's just a lot of this going on around Europe. So it's hard to balance. But all right, I think that we could probably talk for hours. So I'm just going to end it on this. For our audience who are interested in moving to Portugal, what would be some advice that you give them? Because I think you touched a little bit about that with, culture, maybe language, but what advice would you give them so that they can integrate into the culture and just have a smooth landing altogether?
Yeah, I would say the first thing is expectations. Do not expect this to be your life in America or the UK or wherever else. This is going to be different. And I think that the people who are the most upset with moving here and trying to integrate into a life here are the people who speak English everywhere they go, get upset that someone's not understanding them, expect everything to be just the way that it was. Expect service to be very quick and speedy. Expect lines to move quickly. Expect everything that they had at home to get here. And we've seen so many people do this, that they really just think that anywhere is just going to be just like where they're from, but maybe a little bit cheaper. And that's not what you're going to get in Portugal. You're going to get something that's actually very different. And I think knowing that the culture is quite different, and even though it might not look as different to you on the surface, when you scratch a bit, you do understand that people are a lot slower to have a conversation with you that actually means something. And they are going to take time to really open up. They are going to be late to just about everything. They are going to say no as the first response, even if that's not necessarily going to be the answer. That's just what happens. They're going to be like, no, we can't do that. And then you're like, but actually, can we try to do that? There are these nuances that are just different in this place, that if you're coming in expecting it to be exactly what it was in your home country, you're going to get really frustrated and you're not going to enjoy your time here.
That's great advice.
I think from my side, I would say it's something similar to what Liz has said, but I think for people who are wanting to consider moving here, it's to think very carefully about why it is that you're moving here. because so many people, one of the classic conversations that a couple would have is they arrive in Lisbon, they have an amazing holiday, and one of the first questions is, do you think we could live here? You know, and I'm like, okay, no, that makes sense. But the whole idea is that you would want to live here for certain reasons. There's something about this place which you like. And when you come here because you like this, every time you ask this place to change, it becomes less like the place that you want it to be. And as that change is happening, you're building it into the place that you probably were leaving from. And then you're going to be unhappy. So take a moment to consider the sincerity, the authenticity, the quality, the value of this place before you move, because it's in all of our best interest for that to stay as true as it is at that time for as long as it can be, because then it'll be the place that we always wanted to live. And that's what I would suggest.
So good. So well said. But I would just be like, okay, we're done. Ending on that. But I do want to ask you real quick. You have a podcast as well. So I want you to tell us real quickly about your podcast so that our audience can go over there.
Yeah. So we started a podcast called Expats Listen, which you can find on Spotify, Apple, or wherever. And yeah, I think it's telling our stories. We also are starting to do some interviews of other people as well. But it's really sharing the more difficult sides of our life abroad and different people's lives abroad, because I've lived in a bunch of different countries before moving to Portugal, and this is Ryan's first move out of South Africa. So I think the two of us have quite different perspectives on what that move abroad is and how that feels and everything like that. And then Ryan, as a psychologist, has become a psychotherapist just for expats these days. So he is working specifically with people who are going through this transition and who are moving to a new country, feeling overwhelmed, feeling frustrated. And I think we use the podcast a bit to talk through some of these things that are so common. And I think it's really just nice to be able to share the reality of how we feel instead of the sugar-coated version, because I think a lot of the time you are a guest in this country and you don't want to complain and you don't want to talk about how the CTT is driving me crazy again because it's their national post office and it's a crucial part of how this place works, and me complaining about it isn't going to do anything. So is it worth it? And I think we started the podcast to be like, yes, it's worth it because other people are struggling with these issues too. So let's just talk about it, and then maybe it feels a bit lighter.
Yeah, an outlet to have that, and then to help people and let them know you're not alone in being frustrated with CTT, for example.
But I think, like as you were saying, there's so much in social media, there's so much online now about Portugal and, as you say, other countries as well, encouraging people, you wouldn't believe how cheap it is to live in XYZ, that kind of stuff. And fine, that is fair because that's someone's expression, but it's not really balanced. And I think that's an important thing of being able to take the time to listen to podcasts like yours, like ours, to be able to understand actually what it might be in the realities of living a day-to-day life and what you might be going through, how you might feel through the experience. Because if you are able to get a balanced perspective, it puts you in a much better position to prepare or to even make life work while you're here, and that's really what the goal of our podcast is.
Yeah, that's amazing. And really just focusing on that why, like you mentioned. Why did you move here? Focus on that, through the good and the bad, because no place is perfect. So if you have that in the forefront, then you'll be happy here. Yeah. Well, guys, thanks so much for joining me. It was great to chat, and everyone, listeners, go over to their podcast as well. And thank you again.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been great.
Yeah, we really appreciate it.